Brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Hongwei, for your generous introduction, and bear with the code in the classroom. And thank you, everyone, for joining me online to discuss the role of neurodiversity in shaping creative practice during the Disability Recognition Month, also known as Disability History Month, which runs between November 16th and December 16th. And before starting sharing the creative practice by myself, as well as some like beloved artists that really inspire my creative practice, I would like to brought up this topic of neurodiversity a little bit. Like we know, like neurodiversity, just like gender, situates on a broad spectrum. And for the higher education in particular, we probably come across the term neurodiversity because of learning difficulties or learning disabilities. And if like any of you think you might have some learning difficulties, or especially have an official diagnosis with any of like learning difficulties like myself, like ADHD, attention deficit disability, hyperactivity disorder, or autism, or dyslexia, dyspraxia, like please please reach out for help, because I want to mention this first. I finished my PhD this time last year, and it was quite important, I think, for me to finish the 5-year doctoral project by reaching out for help. And if you are a student from the UK, you are entitled for DSA, which is known for this Disabled Student Allowance. And for my university, from University of Sussex, there's a department called Disability Support, where you can discuss about bespoke adjustment for your assignment and anything you need to help you better accomplish your work during your study. So that's just something I wanna raise awareness for, and it's never too late to get help from DSA and disability support. And for creative practice, which is quite personal and dear to me, helps me as well to get a better understanding of myself, and as well as to engage with a variety of artists which actually share like a similar thoughts and lived experience. So in the next slides, we come across a basic structure of today's workshop, because I'm so bad with time management. So I just want to put this here, and so we have a clear roadmap about what's happening for the next 2 hours. So first, we're gonna start by introducing some basic ideas, such as what is neurodiversity, what counts as neurodiversity, because it's still quite a new topic actually. Even later we're gonna discuss this term came out like in 1990s, but I think it's basically after the pandemic. So since 2021, the word neurodiversity becomes kind of a buzzword, especially in the art and the creative industry, and people start to know better about neurodiversity, which kind of invisible in a way, because it's all about brain function. We're gonna talk about the most important thing, the medical model and the social model of disability. And from this, we're gonna touch
the neurodiversity event of heating.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome. You're welcome.
Cool. Shall I just continue? Yes. Okay.
Yes, please continue. Sorry about that.
No worries. So from the based on the medical model and the social models, we will further discuss disability arts and inclusive arts to distinguish these two concepts, through 4 case studies of 3 artists and mine as well. And my focus to share these 4 case studies will be centered on the idea of intersection, which I put here. So disability studies is not, like Iceland. It actually is very important to intersect with like feminism studies, Black studies, queer studies, and environmental studies. As I mentioned, like after the pandemic, because disabled people, especially disabled people of color, get infected the most during the pandemic. So that's why neurodiversity kind of gets a little bit, like mainstream and the public attention. But I also want to mention, for the past 2 years, I noticed there are very, very few studies made by scholars with neurodiversity. So there's like a queer studies, I guess, from the early 90s and early 2000s. There are many straight scholars writing about queer experiences. So it almost become like a new continent for people who don't have the lived experience of this. And it also reflects on the difference between disability arts and inclusive arts, we will touch upon later. So I'm very glad like neurodiversity has become known to more people these days. And also I want to say it's very essential to establish this research and creative genre related to neurodiversity with intersection of feminism, Black, queer, and the environmental studies to begin with. So neurodiversity will not become another like whitewashed topic. And after sharing some of the case studies and introduction part, I'm gonna start sharing my screen and have some questions from you. I'm sorry, it might not be able to put the questions in the chat, but yeah, you can just raise your hand and unmute yourself and get into like more detailed conversation with me in case you have any questions. And then we will have a short break and come back for a group creative practice. Cool. There's a lot to cover today, but don't worry, we'll get them bit by bit. So the first image I would like to share is from the artist Luca Damiani, and he made a lot of like brain scan images after his neurological trauma after a car accident. So this article is also written by Luca. It's also an open resource on University of Arts London's website titled "On the Spectrum Within Art and Design: Academic Practice." And I can share any of the readings that I'm gonna mention today with you if you have difficulties to find a copy online. And to share this picture, I just want to visualize what neurodiversity is before we get into more like a definition of it. So neurodiversity is mainly the difference of the brain, and even we all know we have different brains, but for the neurodivergent brain, it reacts very differently compared to the neurotypical brain. And without this kind of like brain scanning and other practices, it's hard to tell actually you have this or not. So from my personal like a diagnosed experience, I didn't have this, I didn't know I'm neurodivergent until like 2020, and it was also interesting through the pandemic when I feel I kind of bumped myself into the glass ceiling repetitively, and I had no idea what caused this. And at first, the GP thought it's anxiety, it's depression, but later we kind of look into some of the syndromes and start to realize it's actually ADHD rather than simple depression or anxiety. Although there is a lot of overlap between these two, like the mental health and the neurodiversity. Here is videos. I hope you enjoy the 5 minutes about what neurodiversity is. So I hope you enjoy this like slightly like naive videos, and I really like the metaphor that neurodiversity is just like a diverse rainbow of hats, and and guaranteed like through this talk and workshop you will see a lot of like colorful animations, illustrations, diagrams, because just as part of the ADHD traits, I tend to visualize and the color code everything. And this diverse rainbow of hats metaphor, actually I ran into this quite a long time ago. It was almost like 20 years ago when I was in high school and was planning to submit my university application. And my tutor at the time told me to take a year off instead of applying to join the university because I'm gonna fail. And the reasons she gave to me is quite like that video. Just that you actually in the end she understood I was not trying to be the weirdest eccentric person in the classroom. It's just when everybody see there's a blackboard in front of in a classroom, I see that is a red board, and it was very hard for me to change, to see it is a whiteboard because I genuinely see it as a red board, and it took her like 3 years to understand why I acted in a certain way. And I think in early 2000s there was definitely no discourse around neurodiversity, especially in high schools in China or in Beijing when I was in at the time. So yeah, I'm just quite happy to to share this like slightly personal and also quite colorful animation about what diversity is, and to put in quite simple way. So here we see two different definitions of neurodiversity here, and probably you already have a few seconds to see this already. So as we can see on the left hand side, we have neurodiversity types of something we already know, like autism, like ADHD, OCD, anxiety, depression, and neurotypicality. And on the right hand side, I think it focuses more on learning difficulties, intellectual disabilities, and other genres. Like I want to put this two together. First of all, is just to get you familiarized, because neurodiversity is such a big umbrella, right? So there are many terms under this umbrella, and these are some terms that are mostly associated with neurodiversity. And also, I'm very intrigued by the differences of this two, which I find online, because on the left-hand side, if you notice, the neurotypicality is part of the neurodiversity, which I feel is really beautiful, because people tend to think there's neurodiversity and there is a neurotypicality as if they are two separated binary ideas. And for my practice, especially to kind of dismantle this binary of visible, invisible, disability, and ability, I think the one on the left-hand side kind of represents this idea that these are all different brains, including the neurotypical brains on the picture as well. And also the left-hand side include more mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, which we will talk more in depth through one of the artists called Bobby Baker's work. So I want to point out this because the overlap of ADHD and mental health issues, like for my case, because I can't talk about all the different neurodiverse types, but just for ADHD and depression, you can notice on the left-hand side, the overlap is huge. Like it's almost hard to tell from the very beginning which one you actually are. And on the right-hand side, it also tells you ADHD has 3 different types. So tentative, hyperactive, and combined. And if you fall into one of these categories, like the how to say that, like people see you very differently outside, so you will tend to get depression diagnosed if you are more like a tentative type, and then you probably more easily to get diagnosed with anxiety if you are a hyperactive kind. And also want to mention here, because it relates to what we're going to talk about, intersectionality afterwards. For women, like in particular, it's very hard to get diagnosed with ADHD, because this kind of stereotypical thoughts, right? Like ADHD are just for little boys, like who can't sit, who can't pay attention to things, and girls were very rarely diagnosed with ADHD until late 1990s. And more interestingly, a lot of moms get diagnosed with ADHD after they have given birth to babies, and they found in their baby boys that he has ADHD, and they trace it back and found, oh, it's probably the mom, because ADHD is passed by like generations. So if the boy, for instance, is diagnosed with ADHD, then it's very likely his father or mother one of them would have ADHD. So it's only through the second generation that women get diagnosed with ADHD and get treated properly with different medicines. And I also want to mention in the 90s, most of the women with ADHD were actually diagnosed as bipolar, which also fits into this like social, like imagination of mad, hysteric woman as well, which also will be shown in Bobby Baker's works that we will discuss later on. And so far, we focus on the medical definition, more or less on the neurodiversity, and it takes on this pathological approach, which I can call a deficit approach, meaning this is a disorder and it's something we are lack of that we need to treat. It is problem that need to be fixed. And of course, like after the pandemic, we become more aware of this. It's not just a medical model, and maybe we will see it's more about this like social model of disability studies, which was actually established by Judy Singer in 1998. And when I started to research this, I was quite surprised. Like neurodiversity first mentioned in the like English literature was from Judy Singer in her undergraduate thesis. And this undergraduate thesis got recently reprinted, and it's called like Neurodiversity, the Birth of an Idea. You can find on Amazon and a lot of different platforms. So yeah, that's also brought me to think like probably, one of you here would find some like very big ideas, such as like a neurodiversity. And now Judy Singer is called by Guardian the mother of neurodiversity, which I found quite interesting. And the yearly mention is from Judy Singer's thesis, because now she's Australian sociology. But I just want to highlight this is an undergraduate thesis, unlike what we think would be like a PhD thesis, for instance. And to quote from Judy Singer's book, neurodiversity is just a new way of saying from each according to their ability to each according to their needs. And this quotation came from Louis Brun. He was 18th century's French sociologist. So Judy Singer was the first one to bring this term into public in English, but of course this term has been discussed in other languages and has a longer genealogy of that. I hope you can see these slides clearly, because it has a lot of like small letters in it. This picture, I think, perfectly captures the discovery of Judy Singer in her thesis, neurodiversity. She established these two different models. The first is called the medical models of disability, which we discussed in the past 7 slides. And from the image, you can see kind of blind individuals, like for the barriers and for the difficulties faced by the individual. It's all a problem individually that need to be fixed. But Judy turned this module from inside out and put it as the social model of disabilities by saying this is not a disability. Actually, later we're going to discuss even ADHD is a kind of a term that's probably outdated, and we can look into other perspective. So from the social model of disability, it's basically saying the people with neurodiversity can achieve amazing things if they get the proper support. And like such as adjustments for their submission, for instance, because I know I'm kind of always running to the last second to submit something, but doesn't mean it's not a good quality. It just means I tend to put things slightly behind, but with a proper adjustment, or probably with just some reminder of the upcoming deadline, it will help so much to beat my procrastination and imposter syndromes. And so this module here, yes, like I said, on the left-hand side is a medical and the social models. And from these models, we come to 2 terms, which often use these terms these days, called ableism or disableism. They are used interchangeably, both describing discrimination. But ableism describes discrimination that favors people with no disabilities. And disableism is a discrimination against people who have disabilities and deny access to work or to support for their career. And here I quote from the UK charity Scope in 2021, as we discussed like so many discussion about neurodiversity during the public after the pandemic. So here it says the medical model of disability says a person impairments or differences disable people. The medical model looks at what is wrong with the person, not what the person needs. We believe it creates low expectations and leads to people losing independence, choice, and control in their lives. The social model says that people are disabled by barriers in societies, not by their impairments or difference. Barriers can be physical, like buildings not having accessible toilets, or they can be caused by people's attitude to difference, like the different color of hats, like assuming disabled people can't do certain things. I would add, like, even with reasonable adjustment. And here you can find more information, like if you're interested in this topic, in the report on British Council's website called Reflecting on Change Report. And in this report, it introduces the differences, the distinguishment between the social model, the medical model with more in-depth, and it also puts into very clear definitions of disability arts and inclusive arts. And as we can see, the disability arts are disabled-led. I think that's the most significant difference. So it may or may not involve non-disability practitioners. The content may or may not be about disability issues. And for inclusive arts, it involves both disabled and non-disabled people, but often led by non-disabled practitioners. I also put the Chinese definitions, the disability arts as 残障艺术 and inclusive arts as 包容性艺术 in the bracket. just because last week, so between December the 2nd and December the 3rd, the British Council Arts in China hosted the 5th UK/China Disability Art Forum, and even it's called Disability Art Forum. As I kind of audited throughout the process, there were very few disabled led groups giving talk or giving access to talk about their work. There was just only one. And also it brings to actually two different questions. Like the first is, of course, like we need to promote more disabled led art practices. It's just because for inclusive arts, it's more like a giving a different branch of creative like possibilities for able-bodied practitioners, and the disabled ones are still disempowered. They're still not in charge of their work. And also they can't broaden the topic a little bit more. So for inclusive arts, it's usually around issues of disabilities rather than more broader issues around it. But on the other hand, we can also question, and this is actually a model established by British Council when they are promoting collaborations between the Great Britain and the other countries for international projects. So we can actually question to kind of emphasize the disabled lab practice. Is it actually possible to put it into practice in other countries as well? To put it simply, is a British model the best? Is a universal one when it comes to disability-led practices? And we can discuss more this like in the chat afterwards. Okay, so now we come to the second part of the 4 case studies of artistic practice. And the first one I'm very excited to introduce to you is the project Artworks. It's Arts Collective based in Hastings, and it got nominated for Turner Prize in 2021, and I will read like a small introduction about their work. So founded in 1996, Project Artworks collaborates with neurodiverse artists and those with complex support needs, providing them with studio space, materials, and facilitators. Tom, who works with lead artist Lucy, is like many of the facilitators, also an artist, and is keen to stress a collaborative nature of the practice. It's a mutual experience, he says. I support Lucy and she supports me. So this is from their interviews with Guardian, and 2021 is such a special year because a Turner Prize shortlist, like 4 artists are all arts collective, and it's for the first time. And I think it also highlights just through the pandemic, we realized 2 things. Like first, artists are not just like individual, like hero, like up front stage person, but the collectives, like the supporting networks, are really important for our practices inside the studio and outside studio as well. And also, I think it raises a very insightful vision of artists as facilitator. Like a lot of times we kind of picture artists like this solo one, this protagonist of their life. But a lot of times artists can also be the backstage ones, like facilitating works, like project arts works. And then I would like to share short videos of them being interviewed for a nomination of Turner Prize. It's about like 6 minutes. Yes, so this is short videos about project artworks, and I think like from these videos, like for me at least, I think it highlights some quite interesting parts. Like first, is importance of lived experience for neurodiverse artists. And the second, like towards the very end, right? Like two participants mentioned, it feels nice to be an artist. It feels nice not to be judged. And I think that's the most important elements that project artworks bring into the art world, which is notoriously for being very judgmental, competitive. You know, there's winners, there's losers, and also about cliqueness. So I think the emphasis on collectiveness is so missing even now in the art world, and definitely project artworks kind of feel that significant gap in the arts. And here I quote from the artist director, Kate Adams, in her interview with The Guardian in December 2021. Then this quote actually comes from her response to the Guardian reporter on, you know, how lucky you feel that neurodiversity has become such a mainstream thing after the pandemic. And Kate says, it was only about 6 years ago that a head of exhibition somewhere within an organization said to us, I don't think it's right to have people with learning disabilities in an exhibition downstairs with an artist of caliber upstairs. They shouldn't be in the same building. And here, Kate reflects on the mainstream reception of people with learning difficulties. Like even like these days, we can see more like disability art forum festivals such and such. They're usually quite underground, not mainstream. And I think Kate here advocates for more resources in terms of bigger funding, bigger commissions, and also more prestigious exhibition venues for their work. Because only through this, we can kind of broaden the topics of neurodiversity and let more people to see their work instead of only neurodiverse people coming to see neurodiverse artists' works. Okay, I'm gonna jump a little bit from these slides onwards because I'm aware of the time. So the second case studies that I would like to share is from Kai Sing Tan, who is now associate professor in arts and culture leadership at University of Southampton, and before she worked in Manchester for a few years after finishing her PhD as Light at University of London, University of College London. So this project is called Magic Carpet, and I will let her talking about this work in the next slides for the next 5 minutes. So this is an interview with Kai-Xing Tan, and alongside the tapestry, the carpet, here's more about the outcome of her work, Magic Carpet. So as we can see from the images, Kai-Xing Tan created a lot of colorful badges to wear, and it says something like "Mind Wanderers in Action, come right with me," or "Mind Wanderers Overloaded." So Kai-Xing would wear these badges and appear in public spaces like trains and like all the public arenas, and I bumped into her a few times in conferences and other platforms, and she was always wearing these badges as far as I remembered in 2017 and 2018 when she got this commission from Unlimited, which is probably the only national portfolio organization supporting disabled artists and disability arts. And it's very exciting that at the moment, Kai-Xing Tan is working on 3 books. Like she's literally like the superhero part of ADHD, I would say. And it's like neurofuturisms and other like artful creative research on neurodiversity, which is expected to come out in 2024 and 2025. And what interests me most is this like a positive, colorful image that Kai-Xing Tan tries to create through her work. So if we Google like ADHD, usually we actually gonna see like like I said before, like young boys who can't sit in the classroom, or we can see like adult men who committed crimes and all this kind of negative images. And Kai-Xing Tan is trying to recreate these images and let people to see the positive aspects of having ADHD as a mind wanderer, particularly through creative practice. And here I would like to quote from Edward Hollowell, who is a quite well-known American psychiatrist who has been working in the field of ADHD for over 20 years. And in his recently published book called ADHD 2.0, he mentioned that ADHD is not purely a disorder. It is a mix of assets and liabilities. A more representative name for the condition is vast or variable attention stimulus trait. This new model recognizes the phenomenon of rejection-sensitive dysphoria and its flip side, recognition-responsive euphoria, the supercharged response to perceived encouragement. Learn how to harness it here. I think Kai-Xing's work kind of embodies Edward Hollowell's statement of changing ADHD into the name of vast, and kind of flips the side and see the positivities of this and kind of acknowledge the diversities of the brains that we have, just like the body shapes that is more visible to the public. So this is the third work by Bobby Baker, and it's called Drawing Mental Illness. Bobby Baker's 11th year of visual diary between 1996 and 2007. She drew 711 drawings to document her transition period during this 11 years after receiving diagnosis of bipolar disorders and also breast cancer. So it was a quite difficult time for her. But before 1996, like if you're familiar with like feminist art practice, Bobby Baker is kind of the number one feminist art practitioners in the UK. She earned a name, I think something called the Jackson Pollock in the kitchen. So she would recreate the kitchen scene with all the food materials in her performance and creating the satire images of housewife in the suburban areas after the Second World War. And this drawing mental illness, which is also published as a book, is kind of the second phase of her 40 years of art practice. So here are some images from the 158 drawings, which made into the final publication of this book. And on the left-hand side, that's a picture of herself kind of turning into the landscape, becoming part of the park, which she usually take a walk. And on the right hand side is a picture of crying a rainbow out of tears on the upper side, and the downside one is of like medical treatment after being diagnosed with cancer. So yeah, so for Bobby Baker's one, I think it's like, for me, it just offers a different perspective to look into the intersectionality, because before the work more centers on neurodiversity, and I think Bobby Baker's one really draws on the overlap of neurodiversity and mental health issues. And also I would highly recommend to see Bobby Baker's work called An Edible Family, which is a sculpture of a family all made of cakes. It is currently on exhibition at Tate Britain as part of the Women in Revolt, Art and Activism in the UK, 1970s to 1990s. And it's a very rare chance to see this 1970s sculpture piece from Bobby Baker to be restaged again. The last one I would like to mention is my own practice, and thanks to Hongwei's invitation, like, I'm very glad to contribute one chapter into the contemporary queer Chinese art. And in this in my chapter, which is titled Too Much and Not Yet Enough, kind of trying to combine the medical model and the social model of disabilities into the title. And in this article, I briefly talked about my position with queerness, and I look queerness through the intersection of queer studies and neurodiversity, which comes to the term neuroqueer. And I draw the similarities between these two, like even ADHD is something to be born with, and queer is more like social construct. But through both, I could see there's a seek for pleasure that is deprived from our society at the time, and also definitely rebellion against social norms. And this is just how the brain works. And in this chapter, which I will just go very quickly with it, I divide into 3 different stages of my practice up to the pandemic. So the first phase, like 8 theater works I directed and wrote before coming to the study abroad. And so all this work was made before 2013. Then it came to a phase of me wandering in the US, Europe, and UK doing my master's and PhD studies, in which I switched my tour from spoken language, like narrative-based storytelling, into body art, like, so I can use my body as an expression rather than feeling restricted or kind of, conundrum of whether use English or Mandarin to continue my practice. And this is a piece I made during the last week of the pandemic in 2020. So between December 25th and December the 31st, when I did a live stream called Non-Tasters, and I had like different themes of each day. And I want to just draw like conclusion on these three different phases of my practice of pleasure driven. There's no logic, and sometimes I feel it's very hard to write artist rationale to capture like what's the genealogy of my work, because I think it's definitely driven by pleasure. It's definitely driven by what I feel like to do at the moment. So actually at the moment after finishing the PhD, I felt quite into research. So I guess I'm producing less public facing theater work or live art work. But yeah, who knows? But at the moment, I'm really into researching and interested in writing about other artists' works, like you just saw in the previous 3 case studies. So this has come to the last topic before we're taking questions and followed by a break. So here is the intersectionality. And yeah, like I said about me, like nothing makes sense unless they are visualized and color coded. So I just try to put this to here in a quite colorful way to explain what intersectionality means. And as a theory, it comes from the 1980s Black feminism movement. But without going into, you know, like the whole heavy theory perspective intersectionality, I just try to visualize here to see that we all have intersectional identities. So when we do disability studies or we do creative practice relating to neurodiversity, for instance, we can also look at other perspectives around us that makes us, such as sexuality, age, gender, ethnicity, religion, class, and the trauma, and probably like, you know, like status of your personal relationship. All this contribute to a more holistic understanding of who we are, of what intersectionality means, and also for today, like what neurodiversity actually feels like for different individuals. And to put it here, because I want to just share like an anecdote this summer when I was in Beijing. So I was talking with an organizer who is in charge of the disability arts or inclusive arts in China. And I said, okay, I have long-term health issues as well as ADHD. And the first thing she told me is that ADHD actually doesn't count that much as a disability in terms of the program she produces, because Elon Musk also has ADHD, or at least has ADHD traits. And it's so I just want to use this anecdote to show that's kind of a, you know, kind of overlook the other intersectional identities by only focusing on ADHD and giving names of all these, you know, like giants and super heroes who have ADHD traits, but not acknowledging the other kind of identities that probably contribute to their work, but also create barriers for their work at the same time. And here are just some books I recommend, and they all focus on the intersectionality between disability or neurodiversity studies and some other fields. So the one on the left is Neuroqueer Heresies by Nick Walker. It was published, I think, in 2021, and it is one of the first books introducing this very new term, neuroqueer, because for me, and also I guess for many neurodivergent people, we all kind of notice like the huge overlap between the queer community and the neurodiverse communities. And this book taps into why there's such a huge overlap that cannot actually be fully explained by rock. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just saw I was muted for a second. So I just quickly finish the last 2 slides. The second one is a Mad Woman in the Attic, and also the one called Still Mad, published by the same authors after 20 years. And these 2 books look at the overlap of feminism studies and the disability studies, in particularly the social imagination of the hysteric mad woman in English literature. The third one I'm looking at is a book by Sammy, published in 2022. I believe it's called Black Disability Politics. So as the name shows, it also explores this intersectionality between Black studies and disability studies. The last one is called Disability Studies and the Environmental Humanities Towards the Eco-Crit Theory. So as its name shows, apparently it looks at the intersectionality of environmental issues and disability studies by focusing on the toxic land, the toxic water, and how people in certain geographic areas get affected disproportionately because of the environmental issues, and calling for justice for that through this intersectional research. Yes, so I'm gonna stop here now to take some questions, and yeah, sorry, I didn't look at the chat, just trying to go through this. I'm glad I actually managed to do that within an hour. So now I'll just stop sharing and take some questions, and we'll come up to do some practice from this prompt from Inga Schonebel. But I'm gonna introduce more details about Inga after the break. Thank you very much for being here and listening to me rumbling through some thoughts about neurodiversity and creative practice. Thank you.
I think like Burong has said, we will take a break first. So let's reconvene in 10 minutes at 12:20, and then we can start the Q&A session at 12:20. Thank you, everyone. See you later.
Hi, while we're waiting to start the second session, can I ask students from the media identities module to scan the QR code? I can hear the echoes as well.
Hi, welcome back, everyone. Sorry, I just realized I haven't introduced myself. I'm Xing Huang, and I'm a teaching associate in the Cultural Media and Visual Studies department. So that's me, and that's already too much of me. So anyway, let's start the Q&A session. And since we noticed that the chat function might not be working for some of the audience here, so maybe the best way to do this is to raise your hand and then unmute yourself, or probably open your camera as well, so you can ask our guest lecturer Burong your question directly. So now can I just invite audience to raise your hand, please? And if there's anyone who have question in the lecture room, probably Hongwei can pass on the question as well. So yeah, thank you. We have a question from Yi Kun Wu. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, hi, Burong. Thanks
Hello.
so much. Thanks so much for this really fascinating presentation. I noted down a lot of interesting points, and I do believe we have a lot to communicate. I heard you talking about a lot of symptom names like ADHD, autism, and depression, right? And as we know, they are just sometimes problematically considered as pathological in real life. And as we know, you are not just a scholar, but also a practitioner. So I guess you might be really eager to put all of these things on stage. And yeah, with creativity for sure. And it's like you are doing everything just here, like the other way around. So, and I have huge confidence that using like performing neurodiversity is a really good way to help us just to reconsider our traditional notions of disability, able-bodiedness, and ableism, right? So I just wonder, and since we know the performances on stage are not necessarily subversive, sometimes they just engage with the reinforcements, like making the problematic discourses of disability stronger and stronger, and just a much more serious than ever. And so my quick question would be, when you are actually enacting disabilities on stage, how could you, how could you just let your spectators or audiences know you are not just poking fun, or just you are not just being playful, you're actually just making sure you are transforming their perceptions of this problematics of disabilities. And also we know the subversive effects on stage are not just they won't stay for too long. I mean, they just will disappear sometimes once for all when our audiences or spectators just leave the theater. So I'm just quite curious, what would be the ways that you can actually use to deal with this quite tricky things here, right? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your kind words and question, Ikun. And I think for me, because I got diagnosed about 2 years ago, like through the pandemic, so I'm still exploring like how to stage and how to engage neurodiversity. And for me, like my current projects are actually around time blindness, as Hongwei Bao has kindly bared with me for so many things. I think like time blindness is one of the traits I'm exploring at the moment. I think it's particularly for ADHD people. So I don't want to explore too broad, you know what I mean? Like no neurodiversity or even disability as a whole genre. I think I just want to focus on a very specific trait and narrow it down. So like how can I actually stage and embody altered time perception? I think particularly relevant for people after pandemic, right? We all have altered time conception now, and nobody remember which day of what time it was for probably an entire 3 years. And my quick thoughts would be just staging shows of variable length. It can be very short performance. It can be durational ones. Like the live stream one I did was actually 7 days, not like 7 days consecutive, but like every day for about half an hour for like 7 days during a holiday period. Even I was just asked to do one performance, but still kind of extend it into a 7 day. I think that makes a more holistic experience for me and for the audience as well. So to answer your question, I think for me and also for any people who are exploring these topics, to be as specific as possible and not using buzzwords and waving a flag and more like advocate. I think for artists, it's all about how we feel our situation, how we situate ourselves with these big terms as queer, for instance, and also as a neurodiversity. So everyone will have a different answer, but for me, it's definitely also time perception and redefine duration through durational performance, whether super long or super short.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is a truly thought-provoking, and I'm quite looking forward to our further discussion in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, after this workshop. Yeah, thank you.
I think we have a question from the lecture room. Hongwei, you just raised your hand.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So first, I want to thank Burong for delivering this wonderful talk. I've learned a lot about neurodiversity. So just to let you know that we had 4 audiences in the classroom. I mean, the classroom is not as cold as it looks. So that's good news. And the audiences have said how they loved the talk, but they had to leave because they had to go to the next event. So I have a question for Burong, which is that most of our audiences are university students and teachers. Of course, not everyone can create art. So what about that we discover that we are neurodiverse, but we are facing different deadlines, such as essay deadline, dissertation deadlines, etc., that we have to meet? What would be your recommendations be?
Yeah, just to thank you, Hongwei, for your question. And to continue with actually the last question, it's like for me, it's the particularly difficult task is time management. So for me, like during my study, it would be a very detailed and stressful negotiation with my tutors and with the whole drama department about time management and what kind of frequency, of a supervision, short or long, that I need. So I mentioned at the very beginning for the DSA, the Disability Student Allowance for UK students, and for international students, I believe the university usually allocates a part of budget also for international students to have a confidential conversation about what they need, and the disability support staff can act as a middle person to help you negotiate, because sometimes it will be hard just to confront with a tutor saying I need extra 2 weeks and I don't want to be marked down. So the disability support department, which is a name for my university, University of Sussex, I think they can act as a third person to negotiate with this. And when you finish your study, like Hongwei says, if you are staff, then you can apply for the access to work support. It's a government scheme that can allocate support workers to take some of the admin hours for you. And at the moment, application takes 8 to 12 weeks to process. And I'm still kind of in this process after finishing my study. But I would definitely suggest you to either apply for DSA or apply for access to work. I think the government really should make it more visible. I think because so many people need help, and you know the government doesn't want to help everyone in a way. So I think it's quite important to advocate these two different schemes for students, UK-based international students, as well as staff members. And for creative practice, for me, just a way actually to better understand myself. And that's how I see the importance of art. And that's why, like during the talk, I mentioned about 3 different stages of myself, and that's literally to know what I felt happy about during that specific years through specific art genres. And for me now, to creating narrative-based full-length drama would be a torture that would just be impossible. So I think art practice is just a way to amplify your voice and to explore in depth, because in one of the videos by the Project Art or Works, they also mentioned language sometimes, it's a bit tricky. It's hard to explore this. So art is more like a facilitating tool for me. And I also see artists as facilitator as well. So what I do today, actually, I see as a creative practice by presenting and sharing these things and facilitating. So I think art can be a very, very broad, field to consider, and it's activist, it's art, and it's creative, and it's kind of get a very personal understandings that sometimes surprise myself as well.
That's great. So I completely agree with you that everybody can do art, and there are different art forms and genres that people can delve into. This is great. I would also add that at Nottingham, there are similar structures. For example, Nottingham has student service centers, and in student service centers, there's health and well-being team. I'm sure there is a disability or neurodiversity officer that can be of help. So if you don't know where to start, I think that there are 2 ways. First, to talk to your personal tutors. They will be able to refer you to the Student Service Center. And the second way is, of course, just to go to Student Service Center website and then look for health and well-being. And then you'll be able to either contacting an officer by email or calling them or submit a request form and so on. So it is doable. I think that more people should take advantage of the health and well-being services offered by the university. So that's all for my question.
Thank you so much, Hongwei and Burong. That was very, very useful information actually for all of us. And next up, we have a question from Samuel Walker. If you can unmute yourself or probably open your camera, and you can ask your question yourself.
Hi, I don't know if this works. No, okay.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Can? Okay. I don't have
Yes.
a camera, unfortunately, but I can talk at least. That's nice. Okay, so last week I went to the Royal Association of Engineers talk on achieving net zero. And it's this like really nicely set up event. There's a lot of people there, you can sort of, there's an air about it. There's an air of, oh, there's some important people here and they're talking about some important things, but I didn't think it was very good. There's a lot of show, there was a lot of stuff that felt very bureaucratic, and it just felt a bit pointless. And a lot of the stuff they were talking about was simple ideas, sure, because it's a public lecture, it's not talking, most of the people there are not scientists. But again, a lot of the people there were from big business as well, and it's kind of seems like it was in their interest to make them look good and to sort of take a very status quo stance. What I particularly liked about this is it just doesn't do that. It does in essence the complete opposite, right? It's challenging, perhaps. It gives this unique look that even as much time as I've spent trying to understand like my own neurodiversity, like my own stuff there, my own ADHD, exploring that's been quite difficult. It's quite hard to find resources, to find the right people to talk to about that. And this was a really, really great opportunity to do that. I think sort of linking to all of that, my question is about the specific choice of the word praxis and the quote given at the start, which was from each according to their ability and to each according to their needs. How that and why those particular phrases were chosen and how they link to creativity and potentially like politics in a wider sense.
Yes, can I just ask, do you mean like the specific choice of the word practice for this talk?
Sure. I mean, so the word used is praxis with an X, which is like it's a slight difference.
Yeah, I just say like from my understanding, like a practices, which is TICES, it's a like more broader term. It involves any kind of creative actions, and many artists prefer to use the practices just to see they get their hands dirty, right? And that's how they start their work, by actually having some kinetic connections, then exploring questions afterwards. But the practices we use here, for me, it just combine theories and practice together. So it's slightly a narrowed down concept. And I guess it's influenced by my practice-based PhD, that you have to be influenced heavily by theories, and you have a research question to start with. So for me, like I have a research question to start with my practice, and it's not a very academic question. It's like what makes you feel good at the moment, right? That's my starting point to do anything. But I still start with this instead of just jumping into diving into the creative mind. And through by asking what makes you good at the moment, you send it into the rabbit hole of, kind of researching the difference between happiness, joy, good, and also social restrictions about this in different periods for different people, different countries. So it can expand a lot into this. But at the moment, I would say all my practice are research driven and all involves a lot of like readings to start with. And I probably will abandon this approach in a year or two. I'm not sure. Just at the moment, it starts with a lot of reading and see what's already there in the field and trying to contribute a little bit. It's like a pyramid. You try to contribute a little bit on top of that. And that on the downside, the practice with X in it makes you a bit judgmental. It makes you like, when you see other people's work, or I have already seen it, it was made in 1970s. What's your contribution to that? And it cannot be, it might be a necessary question, it might not be. So I can see it from the both aspects of using the word practice. It just within the academic field, I think it's just more commonly used by practice-based PhDs, which I just finished. So
that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samuel.
Thank you both. Let's see if we have any more questions from the audience. Yeah, we have one from Hongwei.
Okay, so this is not a question. So while we're waiting for other people's questions, can I ask the audience to do two things? The first one is that students, some students are attending this as part of the media identities lecture. So therefore, can I ask those students to scan the QR code? If possible, I'm sharing the screen. I hope you can see this. So please scan the QR code if you're taking media identities lecture. And the second request is that this event is funded by the University of Nottingham's Disability Recognition Month. And we are asked to distribute or circulate a Q&A, a feedback Padlet, a feedback form, so that everyone actually can help provide feedback to the event. So in the future, such great event can be funded can continue and in a way support more people. So please, can you scan the QR code, everyone, and provide feedback? So that's all for my advertisement. Now over to you, Xin.
If anyone has a question, then please raise your hand. Maybe I can abuse my power as the chair to ask a question, because I do have a question and I didn't want to use the time too much. But since we don't have any question at the moment, maybe I can ask the question. So something. First of all, thank you so much, Burong. I mean, it's fascinating. It's very informative and timely, and I really love your presentation. The question I have is that, you know, because I think the awareness of creating more inclusive space and events has increased quite a lot. But in reality, when we are doing the practices, it becomes quite difficult for a lot of people to think, how do I actually do that? Like, for example, there are people, you know, with different types of neurodivergency, and then how do we make our event or space inclusive? And what are the things we can do to improve the inclusivity in terms of, you know, neurodivergent people?
Yeah, I think the best way to start with is when people register for events like this one online, definitely leave, you know, this common area for people to put what they need, because like you said, people have different needs, different types of neurodiversities, and the best is to be bespoke and to accommodate to the room to see what people need. But usually we would sometimes have sign language, or we would have caption. I would suggest caption. It's for, of course, ADHD who has a mind that wanders all the time and, you know, just forget what I'm talking about or what the other people are talking about. But I think it's also quite useful for international students or for people whose you know, English is not the first language for them. So I think caption can almost become, you know, like the mandatory one for any online events, and the British Sign Language for a lot of cases as well. And for in-person events, there's so much to be improved, like, but it's mainly for the infrastructures, you know, like the wheelchair paths and also accessible toilet near the venue. So there are some small things we can chip into, but I will say definitely these are the more general ones, and there can be specific ones that people put in advance. And if the admin time allows, it's nice to reply to them to ensure that that's actually put into practice. Because for my experience, I raise some questions, you know, and on the day I was like, oh God, it was not actually resolved. It was not addressed at all. So it's nice just to email the people who actually put time to address their needs and acknowledge that before the event, saying we have tried to accommodate it, or due to certain reasons we can't accommodate this. But yeah, just let them know what the day would look like for them to participate.
Thank you so much. That's really, really useful. And Hongwei.
Hi, can you hear me? Yep, I'll just
Yes.
Respond to Burong by saying that for those people, participants who registered but who haven't been able to come to today's talk, we'll be able to circulate the link of the video. We have recorded the talk, but not the Q&A. I hope that this talk can help more people actually with it. So if you are on the mail list, or if you are on the kind of media identity student list, you will receive a recording by email on your Moodle page. So that's all. Thank both of you.
I just want to quickly add, if anyone interested in a specific article or like a podcast by Edward Howell, for instance, or other resources like books, for instance, if you're particularly interested in one or more, you can email me. My email is just burongzeng@gmail.com. You can search Burong Zeng in any social media, you can find me. although I'm not very social media active, you can definitely find me and request a copy if the university, has limited copies, or if you have difficulties finding them online. But I would say most of them are open resource, and the podcast as well. You can easily access to them. But in case you have any difficulties, don't hesitate to drop me a line, and I can send you a copy of them for internal uses.
Thank you so much, Burong. I believe, those additional materials would be really helpful for us to further explore this topic, especially, to understand neurodivergency and in relation how we can apply that to our practices. And thank you so much for joining us today and for giving this such fantastic talk, which we really enjoyed. And if anyone has any question, please feel free to get in touch with Burong. And I guess that's a conclusion to our meeting today. If we can just probably put together our virtual hand and applause for the for our guest lecture. Oh, I actually see that Helen has a question. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. Yeah, Helen has just left the meeting. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. If anyone has any question, probably you can email Burong or check out Burong's work, and then that'll be great. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank Burong and Xin. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.